Hello, everybody. Welcome to this panel on gender, digital labor, and scene work, exploitation, and tech-driven inequalities. I am Gloria González Fuster. I'm a research professor at the Free University of Brussels. In Brussels, I think people will talk for a little while outside, but I will do a little introduction so they eventually talk less. Welcome, everybody here. This panel is, in a way, part of a bigger series of panels that have been going on for like more than 10 years. The CPDP organizers kindly allow me once to do a gender-related panel because apparently we didn't talk enough about gender at CPDP. They said you can do this, and since then I've been doing every year a panel about something related to technology and gender. Because I don't know everything about gender and technology, I'm very, very happy when somebody from the audience, for instance, volunteers to help me organize a panel with some brilliant ideas. So maybe you have a brilliant idea for next year. For this year, there was somebody who kindly said, I have an idea, a subject that we should discuss because we don't discuss this enough. And this was Salomé Lanier from the University of Luxembourg. Welcome, Phil, here like in your panel, because it's partially your panel. We had this idea about doing something about gender and labor online, and why don't we ever hear that much about female workers online? So we hear a little bit about platform workers, which are basically, I think in my head, male workers, which of course is very fine that we hear about them and their rights, but we wonder what happens with female workers. Don't they have problems? Don't they have issues that we have to discuss? So this is basically the point of this panel. We will cover many subjects. Some subjects may be a bit, all are very serious. Some might be a bit dark. So I thought you will let me perhaps do a little joke at the beginning, and then we will go into the deeper subjects. The little joke is that I'm very sad that we don't have in this panel anybody called Carmen. Why? Because it's the first time that we have having a panel somebody called Aida, somebody called Salome, and then I'm missing somebody called Carmen. Yes, is this basic opera knowledge that you should have? Somebody's laughing. Okay, thank you. We will get that. It was the only joke. Thank you. Thank you very much. I've been thinking about this for months, but now I can just introduce you to the speakers briefly. We have Aida Ponce del Castillo from the European Institute of Trade Unions. We have Mireia Llobera from the University of Valencia. Salome already introduced her, and Madeleine Thomas from Image Angel, and she will tell us more. They are going to cover different subjects about the red thread is really gender and labor, and because it's somehow related to this platform workers or work directive, we thought we will start with an introduction, somebody who knows this subject very well, and this is Aida. So if you can introduce us to the subject of labor, work, online platforms, and everything. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gloria, and thank you for being here. I will tell you that since 2024, we have a new law in the EU, the Directive for Improving the Working Conditions of Platform Work. And this directive is unique, really, because it's not only based on labor law, but it also combines, for the first time, data protection law and privacy, which is really fantastic. And here, the idea is that the people working in platforms improve their working conditions and also improve their data rights, because, as you know, there is not really a GDPR for the context of employment, and some issues are really hanging on the uncertainty. At least with the Platform Work Directive, we have better certainty of how GDPR, in this case the Platform Work Directive, applies to platform workers. The main points of the directive is that for the first time, these people who are working in platforms can be classified as employees of a platform, and if they do that, they will have legal protection and social security and all the protections that comes with the contract of employment. That was very controversial to negotiate in the directive, but the member states managed to do so. And in order to be considered a platform worker, well, there are various conditions that need to be put together in order to have that presumption as the directive mentions that. The most tricky issue that for the negotiation was this, the status of employment. when and under which conditions platform workers can really achieve that status. Under labor law, and I'm very sorry, I'm not a labor lawyer, but under labor law, this looks very different in member states because labor law is dependent on national law, and the status, the rules for getting the status differ a lot. The second part of the directive is dealing with algorithmic management for the first time in our life, and it's absolutely fantastic because it copy-pastes in great measure the GDPR, but it not only copy-pastes it, it does a little bit of polishing, if you like, or adaptation for those people working in platforms. So we have the same rights, but for example, we also have an enhanced right not to collect and process emotion data or psychosocial data, psychological data. This is a great advantage in the context of employment, so that platforms have this very specific limitation. And the rights for explanation, review, etc., and the rights for the trade unions or for the collective actors that represent platform workers to help them in order to have access requests, exercise the other GDPR-like rights, and accompany them in understanding what the algorithm does. Another interesting feature of the Platform Work Directive is this obligation of platforms to disclose how algorithms work before they engage someone into platform work. So that's really trying to enable some sort of transparency. We are now at the transposition level, so you know that member states have 2 years to transpose this directive into national law. We have been having meetings with the Commission to draft a guidance because, as I have mentioned, labor law it's a national remit, and some labor laws are not easy the different labor laws are across the EU, and it's very difficult to come together to a simple understanding. So we are in transposition period. The guidelines by the Commission are going to be published soon, helping data protection, helping ministries of labor and social affairs to implement and transpose the directive, and helping them to talk to data protection authorities because they are also involved in implementing or enforcing the data protection part of this. So besides the transposition of the directive, we also have other instruments that were signed before the directive itself, which are these collective agreements at sectoral level or at national level. I have put some examples that have been very famous. Some of them do tackle domestic work, for example, but you have to remember that collective agreements are very important to further regulate the specificities of platform work, either in a given member state or in a given sector. And with that, this is a very broad framework of what the Platform Work Directive is.
Thank you very much. This was a brilliant introduction. We just heard domestic work. This is one of the subjects that you will further elaborate. Mireia, you have the floor. And the slides will come. Slides. Yes.
Good afternoon. Firstly, I would like to thank the organizers for inviting me to take part in this insightful seminar. It is a genuine pleasure and honor to be here today. My analysis of the gig economy and domestic work from a gender perspective is based on my research in the context of the European Labour Authority and has 3 analytical axes. The geography and supply of platform models, the regulatory regime and its evolution, and the gender and migration dimensions. As regards the comparative geography across countries, empirical evidence points to a concentration of platforms in Western Europe, with Germany, France, Italy, Spain, and the Netherlands as the most dense and diverse markets. Germany stands out for the presence of transnational platforms and for hybrid models that range from pure marketplaces to arrangements where the platform assumes contractual responsibilities, which generates debate regarding the existence of false self-employment and the intensity of algorithmic control. On its side, France combines the traditions of service à la personne with tax incentives that have facilitated the partial formalization of domestic work. In contrast, in Italy and Spain, pre-existing patterns of precariousness have been rapidly taken over by marketplace, while in the Netherlands and the Nordic countries feature marketplace models with a greater formalization and social protection frameworks. Finally, in Central and Eastern Europe, platform density is lower and local initiatives predominate. However, labor mobility towards the West mean that these countries form part of a broader labor circuits. As regards their regulatory framework, we need to raise one question. Can a domestic worker hired through a platform be considered a platform worker under the Directive 2024/2831? The answer is conditional. Such worker can certainly be considered a platform worker provided that certain conditions are met. So when is domestic work considered platform work, and when does the presumption of employment apply? The presumption is triggered when several indicators of control are present, but not all indicators are required. A combination of some of them is enough. Key indicators, especially relevant for domestic workers in platforms, are number one, price setting or price limiting by the platform. Number two, control over working time, availability or acceptance of tasks. Number three, algorithm supervision. That means ratings, visibility, penalties, deactivation. Number four, restrictions on working for other clients outside the platform. Number five, detailed rules on how the service must be performed. Or number six, sanctions for non-compliance, suspension, account removal. Most domestic work platforms, such as Helpling, Batmate, Clean2, Wayuk, UPs, etc., clearly meet these criteria. If these elements are present, the platform must be considered the employer. This is particularly important because domestic work is the sector with the highest rates of undeclared work. At the same time, our countries are currently facing a crisis in the care sector caused by the aging of the population. So demand for workers in this sector is high. However, barriers to obtaining regular residence make it difficult for migrant women to declare their jobs. On the other hand, the inviolability of private homes requires the adaptation of investigation methods. However, their activities only achieve their objectives insofar as they get to the hard-to-reach groups. These workers are less likely to be inspected, especially migrants, due to the difficulties they face in reporting their situation given the risk of deportation. Domestic workers' undeclared status is also often linked to the unaffordability of these services in countries where little public financial support is given. There is also a direct link between their working conditions and the quality of the services. For this reason, the French system of services vouchers is particularly noteworthy. And other policy strategies also play a role in the formalization of platform-mediated domestic work, such as a diversity policy, an introduction of penalties based on social damage, or incentives to encourage the transition to the declared economy. On another note, women in domestic service find themselves in a particularly dangerous intersection. In their case, the interaction of gender, race, and class define the specific social disadvantage they face. This requires an intersectional approach that enables us to move beyond the gender mainstreaming paradigm, as well as beyond the problematic approach of multiple discriminations. Furthermore, integrating the perspective of the political economy of care helps to situate platformization within a broader context of the dismantling or outsourcing of public care services and its implications for gender equality. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I think we are seeing that one of the problems with the thing that we're trying to discuss is this invisibility that pervades the whole thing for a variety of reasons. So unseen work is one of the terms in our title. We will now move to a subject that is also, we move to you, Salome. You're looking, no, I thought we moved to you. Are you the last? I thought you were not the last. Okay, so we are not moving to Salome. Is this fine? Yes?
Fine by me. Yeah.
Okay, so we are moving to another field, completely different, where there are many similar problems. I'll let you tell us more. Thank you.
So I don't come with notes or slides, but I do come with not very much sleep. So my name's Madeleine, and I have 10 years experience working in sex work in online platforms. And as I have now come to the kind of realization, it's part of the job to have content leaked, and to challenge that, I have created some technology to add perpetrator data into imagery in an encrypted and privacy-preserving way, so that should something negative happen with imagery, video, or live broadcast, the worker on the platform has some ability to take action against that person. And this is just one of many measures that are not being used in many online platforms.
Can you tell us a bit more, perhaps? So this is one of the challenges, I suppose, when you're doing sex work online. There are more challenges. Yeah. Do you relate somehow to this? The questions that we were discussing, I suppose the problem, the formalization of the work is a challenge in general.
Yeah.
To advance some rights, there is always this big dilemma.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's a lot of people go into platform work because it's easy and it works around family. And that's, the number one reason why you want a job is to support your family. Unfortunately, with unseen labor on those types of platforms, and actually lots of different types of platforms, there's lots of unseen work that you do to just have the basics, so just to stay safe or just to stay appearing in the algorithms, and you have to self-hack the systems and learn the systems. And I've been working in this space for 10 years, so I've seen the progression of really simple algorithms and then really, really harmful ones. And there's also no way to get answers from those larger corporations and say, how can this be fairer for everyone instead of, the highest earning or something, for example.
Which is precisely one of the challenges that they are trying to achieve with the Platform Work Directive,
Yeah.
is transparency. Good. If there's no other point, we can move then now to Salome. I thought we were moving to Salome, that we can continue the conversation. Salome, tell us more.
So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And unfortunately, we are going to move to the dark side of technology, which you just mentioned a little bit. So, as a preliminary remark, I'm going to focus on a very dark aspect of how technology can be used, but I really want to emphasize that technology can also be used sometimes for resistance and empowerment. So the discourse I'm presenting today kind of pick a certain perspective, but that's not the entire perspective. So as you can see on the slide, in the 10 minutes I have, I really want to try to answer to 3 questions. The first one being, how is technology facilitating labor exploitation? And I think in this conference, you might have heard in the past few years a lot about algorithmic management, because we talk a lot on platform work. And I really wanted to emphasize that technology can also be leveraged by employers and human traffickers in much more mainstream ways. And I'm going to highlight 3 types. So the first one is deceptive recruitment. We see a lot of legitimate job advertisements on legitimate job platforms actually hiding exploitation, preying on more precarious workers, especially migrant workers. And on that point, there is a new trend that has been emerging, which is the use of AI to translate these advertisements and automatize their posting on different types of job platforms, which makes the recruitment, the deceptive recruitment of workers, even more easy for the employers and the traffickers. The second point is that technology can be used as a way of control, but also of coercion. So again, we talk a lot about algorithmic management, but I've come across cases of just employers putting cameras in illegal workplaces, such as cannabis farms in the UK, just to see what the people would be doing 24/7, pushing the meals just below the garage door, and these persons would never see any other human being. So technology can also be used as control through connection, by connecting the trafficker to the victims, by making sure that the trafficker knows 24/7 where the person is, through GPS, through constant phone calls, through texting 24/7. And on the other side, technology can also be used as a means of control through disconnection, by taking away the phone, by controlling access to social media, by restricting access to the phone calls, for instance, by listening to phone calls to the families. And families have this very central place when it comes to exploitation and technology, that you don't want your family to know. And maybe the trafficker is going to leverage this family connections to actually threaten you, to say, if you don't do that, if you don't continue in this sector, if you don't do what I want you to do, I'm going to leak certain content. I'm going to tell your family, for instance, that you do prostitution, or I'm going to tell your family that you're growing cannabis. I'm going to tell your family that you are traveling to a certain place to sell a kidney. So first deceptive recruitment, then technology as a way of control, and then technology is bringing us to the spotlight. Well, not so much to the spotlight, but it's showing new places where exploitation can arise. So for instance, in the erotic labor market, we have seen, or there is awareness being raised on exploitation in the webcamming sector, in the pornography industry. And on the other side, in other type of sectors, we have platform work and algorithmic management, as I've been saying. And I have a lot of colleagues from sociology, from media studies, using this concept of exploitation to define the labor conditions of these workers. And now we start to see these workers using the concept of modern slavery, of human trafficking, to actually qualify their working conditions and ask for rights. So I just mentioned human trafficking and modern slavery. So what could be the role of the anti-trafficking legislation? What could be the role of the criminal law in these settings? So criminal law can be seen a bit far from the Platform Work Directive, can be seen a bit far from the GDPR, but it might be all connected. So from the anti-trafficking literature, we have a long history of criticism to criminal law and to enforcement, particularly because it fosters policing and imprisonment systems that are being criticized. But the anti-trafficking legislation also has a part on migration legislation and a part on migrants' rights, especially with the right to receive a work and a residence permit when exploitation is identified. And the third point that is quite interesting from the anti-trafficking legislation is that it really raised awareness on the supply chains and the role of intermediaries in never calling out the exploitation settings. And the last question is trying to be a bit more optimistic and positive, like, okay, well, this is bad. What can we do about it? So when it comes to sexual exploitation versus consensual sex work, the first decision would be to decriminalize sex work, because we see that in criminalization settings, it pushes the workers in environments with more surveillance, with more policing, with more risks of even imprisonment, and that restricts their digital rights. The second point is to maybe bridge the gap between criminal law and procedural digital rights. So if you're an NGO and you receive a victim of human trafficking, you are going to call the police. That's like a basic reflex. Okay, but maybe the person has their data leaked. Maybe there is illegal content that they want to have taken down. So here, maybe this NGO could actually look at GDPR, could look at the Digital Services Act. And the last point that I wanted to make was to, in general, raise awareness on exploitation and on labor and social rights. So in a world where the workforce is getting even more and more precarious, I think it's quite important to try to identify, to be more aware of the little red flags for exploitations in all types of sectors, including in the academic sector. And there is a feminist book club tomorrow at 8:45. I know it's very early in the morning, but if you're interested in the topic, please feel free to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Keep the microphone. Thank you. So we had this very nice overview of the role of technology in labor exploitation. And I know, Aida, you are always thinking about the role of technology in labor. That was a bit of a dark picture. Is your picture in general also this dark? And you can tell us yes, and we will survive, but how?
I'm afraid that I'm a darkie. Yes, well, the role of technology on labor, it's about power and control. If technology wouldn't be there, there wouldn't be that power asymmetry and information asymmetry that already there is in normal employment relationships. What we want to get with technology, with automation, with performativity, with competitiveness is getting more power over the person who is subordinated to the employer, and to get more control, more power over their data, their sensitive data, how they perform, more power and control over how they work, when they work, and why they work, so that technology can nudge in which type of days, schedules, and environment the algorithm can push for more work to be done or for other types of shifts, and it depends on the workers to accept. It's very difficult to have a control over technology. The workers with working with a phone, they cannot talk to a manager. And it's very difficult to say, no, can we speak about that? Can we change the working conditions already coded in your algorithm? So that's why I think that algorithmic management, which is a concept that I don't really like because it seems very abstract, is encoding this darkness of technological nudge. Algorithmic management, you can see it as managed by the algorithm, which in my opinion is completely wrong, because there is no algorithm that manages people. It's people managing through software. Someone designed the rules of the algorithm, so it's not just algorithmic management as if it was so abstract. And the term is coined and it's in EU law and we cannot do anything about that. But I think we can have a critical view on how these technologies are really being pushed by someone, by a manager, by an employer who is deciding how to perform work, how working conditions have to be organized by the workers, and the workers have very little power to say, why am I working on this day? Why am I getting this type of clients or this type of routes?
Thank you very much. I would like to go back to Madeleine. So I think your case is not about algorithmic management, but it is about, as you said, we have to use technology. Everybody is using technology, but then you're reclaiming technology to protect yourself somehow. Maybe tell us more about how did you get this idea? Is it working? Is it working? Yes.
I think first I'd just like to say that we're talking a lot about algorithms and platforms and technology, but actually the most important thing that we need to recognize is the way we speak, and that's including us on stage, but the way people in the audience speak when we say sex work, and we respect that, and we choose to empower somebody to make a choice that they feel is right for them. We then empower them to feel seen and give them the space they need to thrive. And when we empower people, we give them the choice to go and make a great decision, and then they give them the choice to go and make even better things for themselves. So I just want to recognize the decrim argument, because it is so important to recognize particularly women's rights, to choose to do something with their labor, their choice, their body. But in terms of platforms and kind of taking back control and hacking the system, the technology I've built, basically when I present it to people, they say, what do you mean this doesn't already exist? And it doesn't exist because it was just such an overlooked area. Nobody considered that there could be such harm in things like live streaming, if someone were to take a screenshot, for example. So I think when it comes to creating protections that workers need, the answers are right there in the people experiencing the harm. And it may be difficult for large corporations to kind of hear through the noise of, I have this recommendation for this particular type of technology, but ask, quiz. It should be mandated as part of having a big tech platform that you ask these very small niche people and experiences, how do you come across this type of harm or that type of harm, or tell me your experience. Really push. We need to know where the holes are in this, because that's where the harm's happening. But the tech itself, if I can quickly cover it, it uses very small digital watermarks that you can't see to embed user data into images. And this is not data that is so easily decoded as you could run through an AI and say, tell me who this is. It has to be decoded through the right method, and even then the data has to be given to the right platform to be able to decode. But say, for example, I was live broadcasting and somebody took a screenshot of my image, then they run that through a Nudify app, and then I find that 6 months later, and I can't remember where I was broadcasting, or perhaps I was broadcasting in multiple places. I can report that to Image Angel, and we will look into the image, and we will be able to, through the right channels, report to the platform who that user is, even though it has been deepfaked, and we can tell the platform who to ban, and if it is requiring police action, we can even take that action as well.
Thank you very much. I think it's all this dynamic of empowerment. I think to get to the point where you can do something to further empower yourself, you have to already be a bit empowered or
Yeah.
And I want to just build a bridge with Mireia and the problem that in many cases, well, people don't have many difficulties to even find the solution to their problems or energy to address their problems. Do you see anything, I don't know, positive or any hope I'm looking for, or no hope, and it's also fine. So technology being more and more present in domestic work, and you said there is some good case of French, the French system is sort of good, but it's not the technological solution, or it's not about workers doing something, just that the French welfare system is sort of nicer. But do you see an evolution that we will get more protection or different protection of hearing about the harms that are being experienced?
Thank you for the question, Gloria. So I can talk about my country. We have one of the more developed legislation in Spain concerning platforms, in the sense that all digital platforms have to send information to the tax agency and to the social security authorities, and they have very tough transparency obligations. On the other hand, the presumption that is in the European, that is quite soft in the European legislation, is actually very strongly defined in our national legislation. So just by the fact that you are a platform worker, without any of the other requisites, you are considered a worker. So the presumption, the labor presumption, applies directly. Of course, it is rebuttable. Also I think platforms, they also bring traceability, in the sense that they are more public, and I think they can allow authorities, for example, in domestic work, the labor inspectorate in my country are focusing on platforms because it is so difficult to go home by home that it is actually easier to find them on the web. So they are adapting their way of investigating, as I said before, and they are hiring a lot of technology experts to try to go through all that information, and not only collecting information, but doing data mining, which I think is another important advance that is on the hands on the authorities. So I think so. I think that in the right hands, technology can also play a positive role.
Thank you. So, Salome, you saw this coming probably. Can we then see a positive role for technology in fighting against labor exploitation online?
No, yes, definitely. We see, for instance, hotlines. So victims can directly contact an NGO or the police through a hotline. And there have been some developments on hotlines. It's not only about regular calls. On many hotlines now, you can call on WhatsApp, or you can call on, I don't know, Signal, or, well, Telegram, I haven't seen it yet, but that could be another option. There is also about the cookies. So what if the person goes on a computer, goes to this kind of website, and then decides, no, it's not the right moment. But then the trafficker or the offender is checking the history of the browser. Well, there is a risk that the person is facing even more violence afterwards. So a lot of these websites have developed something in their code so that when the person exits the website, it does not stay in the history. Same for WhatsApp calls. It's going to be hidden. So no, definitely we see some positive developments. I mean, sometimes these kind of technologies are used to police even more certain populations, so sex workers, migrants, by kind of circumventing the original aim of a certain algorithm made to, for instance, detect victims of human trafficking online, and then they're actually used to detect sex workers and go into massage parlors or find brothels and, just put everyone in prison. Despite that, despite this risk of policing, we still see growing number of technological solutions and also non-technological solutions. I think that's also quite important to say that if you want to identify exploitation, so for instance, in the domestic work sector, you can be online, but labor inspectors, they also have to be on site. They have to see what are the working conditions. So my argument here would be, let's try to avoid techno-solutionism. Like, we have great tech ideas that are being developed, but human-to-human contact and being able to communicate, being able to report to a decent human being, that's also super important.
Thank you very much. With this, I'd really like to give plenty of time to the audience to ask interesting questions. So I'm looking at you. I see there is one question, but if there are more questions, raise your hand and we will have time. So we can start. That was a question, or it was a question. Good.
Hello, thank you very much. It's such an interesting panel. But the thing that came to my mind is the platform itself and how it's built. For example, I see a lot of content creators that work in platforms who complain like, from one day to the other, my channel was deleted, or I don't know how I'm going to earn this money because the calculation of the views change every day. So how do you see this as an additional layer of lack of transparency and also disparity between the individual that is trying to work through these platforms and these big tech companies? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe we'll take a second question and a third question, and then I give you the floor.
Okay, yeah. Hi, very interesting panel. This is going to be a very different question. So you talked about how technology opens up to labor exploitation. I'm wondering how we can talk about how labor not facilitates, but also opens you to technological exploitation, and how that techno-violence comes into play with that, because a lot of face work also in the gig economy, but also politicians, teachers, virtually everybody at this point can be exposed to deepfake pornography, well, deepfake non-consensual sexual images. And how does that play with all of the legislative things we can do and all of the technology we can put in place as well?
Thank you. We'll just take a third question and then I give you the floor to react.
I'm gonna kind of tag along the first question. I was wondering to what extent are influencers platform workers, provided that they have enough followers and they probably have a contract, maybe with an agency, and whether the directive, and I think that's more to Ida, whether the directive also considers their welfare and their kind of safety and security online.
Thank you very much. Who wants to start here?
Oh my, I've got so much to say, and 3 amazing questions, and I feel like I'm going to miss them. Lack of transparency in pricing. One thing we don't want as platform workers is somebody to say, here's a minimum amount you can get paid. I have seen it happen, and I think it's interesting. Platforms that, for example, join my platform, I'll give you a certain amount of money to experience it, whether you make money or not. But transparency in decision-making is vital when it comes to how is my income being impacted. I'm not necessarily annoyed that I am earning more or less. I just want to know why, and therefore I can make changes. And also, transparency before a change happens. I want to know, in 2 weeks' time, you're going to make this decision. How might that impact me? What testing have you done? And then I can prepare. I remember I was about to give birth to my daughter, and a platform just ended, just stopped, and my entire income just went. With no warning, and it was life-changing just because somebody went, oh, we'll just turn this off now. So transparency is the best one for pricing. I don't want to take up too much time.
We have time. We have time. You can. We're happy to.
IBSA deepfaking. For a dominatrix, I've got an awful lot of knowledge on tech, and I know that there are solutions that can be implemented today that will prevent deepfakes of tomorrow. For example, there is certain types of makeup, for example, that you could wear as a politician, so that when you're on screen and somebody takes a screenshot, the makeup can confuse AI, but also and that's a personal method that someone could do. It's putting too much work on the victim, for example, but it's possible for news broadcasters or magazines or printing press to embed data into imagery that is going out into the public eye that could poison AI models. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's complex. But it is possible. It's also possible to add in signal data into imagery that tells you where it has come from. Not metadata, because that's easily wiped, but a signal hidden in the image. Let's say this broadcast right now has something connected to the conference that says it's private, that you had to be there to view it. That if you go to upload it on YouTube, for example, it says, no, this is non-consensually uploaded here for copyright reasons. It is possible to do this. What we would need is the buy-in of multiple multinational companies, and that's massive. And frankly, we've only managed to get hash matching in the UK passed recently, and that's a minimum. So it's a huge task, but I don't see it as one that we can't fight.
If I can build on this topic of image-based sexual abuse and deepfakes, there is a topic that is still not resolved in law, is what is exploitation. And I see a lot of colleagues saying that image-based sexual abuse is exploitation. And as a person coming from human trafficking in labor sectors, I'm like, that's sexual assault. That's a form of sexual assault, and it should be recognized as such. And so for me, the risk of putting the label of sexual exploitation on everything is misleading and diminishing the impact on the victims, on the concerned persons. That was just my point.
Thank you very much. Other reactions in this side of the...
All right, so I will try to link question 1 with 3. And I really apologize because I forgot to say something really key at the beginning. I'm very sorry, Gloria, but I will say it now. So there is a key difference between digital labor platforms and social media platforms. They are not the same, and this is why the directive was created to regulate digital labor platforms, and they are defined as such. They have to mediate labor. Now, and we can discuss that, social media platforms are not built to mediate labor. So, influencers work in social media platforms. And in order to be considered platform workers, some of the prerequisites or elements that the Platform Work Directive lists have to be there. For example, price setting or price limiting by the platform, by Instagram or by, I don't know, whatever. Control over their working time. Well, that might not be there. We don't know. It's à discuter, as we say, to be discussed, you know. Algorithmic supervision on every influencer. That might be really tricky. Restrictions on working with other clients. Possibly not. Detailed rules on how the service must be performed. We can discuss about it. And sanctions. Well, sanctions, we can also discuss about it. So, you see, there's... I finished there.
But you can continue, and I wonder, is this limited scope then good, bad? Does it make sense? I suppose it makes sense.
Remember that the Platform Work Directive was inspired a lot by what we were seeing a few years ago by writers, people writing, performing this type of work. And hence, the law in Spain is called the writer law, not the platform worker law. It's focused on this type of workers, but we have dozens of different types of platform work who are not writers, who are perhaps living different working conditions and different types of precarity that this directive is not really tackling.
Such as?
Domestic workers, immigrants.
I have a very basic question myself that I think I should have asked this before in private, but like sex platforms would not be ever, or are they platform?
It depends.
It depends.
Could I just add that every description of platform work that you just described would also apply to TikTok Live. Everyone. They encourage you to work. There's, you work here, try and get this many coins, this many stars, I can't remember. And also algorithmic bias. They can ban you, they can suspend you for doing various things. It's not exact, but they could be applied. And I think this is important to note that since this was written, those changes have happened and updates and what people want have been added to the platform's possibilities. So law is slightly behind. Again, unfortunately, it is. And things are changing faster than we can legislate and then kind of catch up. And it's happening with all sorts of different technological fields. And then we are not anticipating the harm that's going to come from that. But it would apply to TikTok Live.
Mireia was first. There's somebody against TikTok. Yes?
Yeah. The contributions on the floor made me think that it's not only about technology, but it's about how the world of work is evolving. We had an industrial revolution that made the nature of labor change. Then it came the information society, and now we have digitalization, which is a true revolution in the world of work. So, of course, the Platform Directive is just the very first step. And probably it would make a balance between if labor rights or social rights protection and digital rights protection, which is gaining. I think digital rights there are more protected and not so much labor rights, which is more difficult. But of course, how an employment relationship nowadays is defined is extremely difficult, because even if we talk of social media, of course you do it for free, but it has a value. It can be counted on money. So is remuneration there as one of the elements of an employment relationship or not? So I think labor specialists are trying to redraw or reimagine the concept of employer, which is completely different from the industrial historical area. And of course, our minds have to open up a lot to gather all these different, very subtle differences that I think all my colleagues are bringing forward in this panel.
Thank you very much, Salome.
I really like the answer of it depends. And I think it's not only about online sex work. It's even about riders. In France, you had some decisions in favor of reclassification as employees and others for other platforms that said, well, this platform is not controlling enough, so they are still independent contractors. They are not employees. And I think it's the same when you look at the webcamming sector. There are so many different platforms that control more or less the time, the price, the content that you can produce. But then it means you need to kind of collectively organize if you want to request this reclassification as employees to have access to the labor rights. And this means that you need to be able to contact each other to say, oh, we are all working on this platform and we want to do something. You need to see each other. You need to be able to contact each other. And after the FOSTA legislation in the US, a lot of community supports was taken down, not only in the US, but worldwide. So I think it's very important that the Platform Work Directive also looks a little bit at this collective aspect of people being able to reach out to each other, to contact representatives, to just allow people to think about it and have this possibility to maybe organize and maybe ask, or at least try to ask, for this reclassification.
Thank you very much for this. There is time for more questions from the audience. I see one, I see two. Before I give you the floor, I wanted to say something briefly about deepfakes, because we discussed this also last year. And actually there is some recent development in the newly agreed version of the AI Act. There is something new. I'm not sure if it's good enough, but there is some hope that we don't all have to wear makeup in the future just to be protected against deepfakes. Maybe the AI Act version 2 will save us. We don't know. Maybe next year we can discuss this. But question there, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you for this super interesting panel. I have two legal-related questions. The first one, it is a directive, so it will have to be implemented into the national law. Can we imagine a situation when a certain member states will decide that the rules will not apply on online sex work, like exclude it? And should that happen, and this is the follow-up question, could we use the EU mechanism to actually sue this kind of implementation, because the directive itself doesn't exclude this kind of stuff? Just very, very curious. Thank you.
Very good. I see a question there, but there was another question there first, and then, okay.
Thank you so much. I think my question is also related to a previous one. I'm wondering about like public institution role in this process, but in proactive role. Do you see the realistic role for the traditional public institution and labor inspectors in auditing these algorithmic management systems? And what is your opinion about this?
Thank you. The person is already standing up, so we'll give first, then eventually to you. You're taking notes of the question, right? Good, good.
Hi, thank you so much for that. I'm here representing the European Sex Workers' Rights Alliance, so this is very close to the work that we do. I want to ask, if the law is behind, how can we be able to educate policymakers on these issues? Because we're seeing so much resistance from the EU institutions, especially, to engage with sex workers' rights representation. And I think one of the consequences of that is exactly the AI Act Omnibus, which forbid deepfakes, but then, there is exceptions, and they're like, well, if it's not really intimacy, what does that mean? And if it's not an identifiable person, then that's also okay, and that means that sex workers' labor can be scraped and stolen. So that just shows a profound misunderstanding of the technology. So how can we force that dialogue to happen, basically?
Thank you very much. We can take a fourth question, and then I give you the floor. Yes, here.
You're really testing us. We went from 3 to 4. 4 questions.
4 questions?
Yeah.
Yes, but it's a professional set of speakers here. They can deal with everything. No, we're not afraid.
Yeah, hi. It's going to be a short one. I was wondering, do we actually have any practice with using Digital Services Act in this context? Because you mentioned it, but I was wondering whether we do have any experience, like positive experience. I would prefer to hear this kind of answer with, yeah, using this regulation.
Thank you very much. Who wants to start?
I have a positive experience of the Digital Services Act, which is controversial. My son is 10 and he is learning about Google, and he Googled my name. And when my images were leaked, they were associated with my real public name, my passport name. And because of various age restrictions, he wasn't able to see explicit imagery. And I am so thankful for that. As much as I don't like that you have to put your ID in to watch things, and that it's problematic in certain ways, in that one moment, when he said, "Mummy, I've Googled you," my heart broke. And I thought, oh my God, everything I've been working to try and change the way things are leaked. I thought, oh, actually, it's fine. He didn't see anything.
So there's a lot of potential of the DSA. It's still very hard to get a reply from platforms. So when you report a content, or when you're shadow bound, or when any of the tools that you're trying to implement from the DSA, it's still hard. The platforms are still not listening all the time. They're still not realizing how much power they hold. Or I think they do realize, but they don't want to take responsibility. So let's see in a few years. And I think I wanted to... Yeah, can states exclude online sex workers from the transposition of the Platform Work Directive? In most countries, online sex work, such as webcamming and pornography, is not regulated, so it's illegal. Except in Sweden. In Sweden, recently, a law passed that if you pay for online erotic content, you are criminally liable. So I would say in that country, it would be very okay to exclude online sex workers from the transposition of the Platform Work Directive. It really depends how states are going to transpose. If, as in Spain, they have a transposition that is kind of focusing on certain sectors, well, online sex workers are not going to fit. But if you have a broad transposition that is transversal to all work sectors, why not?
Thank you. We had many questions. You're supposed to remember them? Yes. The auditing is probably...
Okay, so I will address the role of the public institutions first, which is very important. And there is also a key difference or a particularity with this Platform Work Directive. It's a hybrid directive, so we have the labor law part, the presumption of employment, and the data protection part, algorithmic management. So the labor law part has to be enforced by labor authorities. Is that right, Mireia? Yes, very good. And the data protection part by DPAs. And the director says, you two talk to organize that. He doesn't say anything about how to do this coordination. We know that labor law doesn't know anything about data protection, and almost vice versa. We have very juicy finds from data protection on work and monitoring, on algorithmic management, which they are trying to see this problem, but they are not experts on working conditions. So there has to be this cross-fertilization between the two authorities. Now, you ask about how to look at the algorithms. So labor inspectors, they cannot go and inspect the algorithms or the software of a company. They can't, they don't have that power. They can come and see physical working conditions. Broken sofa, cables exposed, leak, that's it. On the contrary, data protection authorities can knock on the servers and say, open them, I want to inspect them. So we have to convince them, this is my activist hat, data protection authorities to really go on the labor aspects. They have fined Amazon and H&M and Uber with juicy fines. So they have to do this work. So that's the caveat with the role of institutions. And then there was a question on how can we educate policymakers? Well, the same as we did when we educated them to protect these riders, mainly. I put them in big brackets because look at what's happening. They are riding everywhere with crappy bikes, with no helmet, with no personal protective equipment, with no insurance. They have to provide their own bike and their own backpacks, and they fall. There are accidents because they have to run fast. So that was not only in the media, that was the real problem, and there was a lot of collective action by grassroots groups. They moved, they went to the parliaments, to the authorities. It was really the grassroots movements who educated the policymakers until the commission says, okay, there is a problem.
Okay. We call it Riders Act, but it's like a colloquial name. It's applied to all the platforms. Then we also have legislation where platforms, and not only platforms, but all companies that use algorithms have to inform the labor authority and how they use it. And the labor authority can do audits. Of course, this is difficult to bring it in practice. They can hide information, but at least it's first as a step that like opening a space. Then, as far as sexual work, I still think, even though we are very European and very international, we have to bear in mind that when the hard time, when we are in front of very, very important lobbies, international standards are not set up. We do not have standards on subcontracting in the ILO, for example. We do not have standards on right to strike in the ILO. And European institutions are also very extremely shy. And we know they do not go far as social rights are concerned. So I still think that the habitat of social labor rights still at national level. Again, the Platform Directive, answering that question about if we can use the directive for so and so. The Platform Directive uses the concept of worker that is established at national level. So if in a country sexual services are considered labor services, they will come within the scope of the directive. Otherwise, they will not. Of course, the directive says we will use the national definition of worker on the light of the court's case law, which is, as we all know, a Elite Taxi and Jodel case. This doesn't bring us very far. So, just to finish, I think we need all this activism. Probably is gonna, it will render results, but it is quite a deception what is happening at international and European level.
Thank you very much. We have still time for, it's 5. One question, perfect timing. So one final question there.
Thank you. I just wanted to answer the part you mentioned, data protection authorities. So I just wanted to put to your attention that last year the CNIL put a very big sanction to Amazon for recording breaks and bathroom breaks of employees. But unfortunately, the Supreme Jurisdiction in France decided that part of the sanction wasn't justified from a data protection point of view, so they canceled actually half of the fine. So it's not that simple for us to use this legal framework to sanction such acts. Thank you.
Thank you. That wasn't a question in the end. So I will ask the final question. Just we are looking ahead next year. What would you like to see happening to solve some of the problems that we have been discussing? You don't seem to believe a lot in laws, so maybe what is the thing that you would like to happen soon, relatively soon, in terms of technological developments, social developments, legal developments? I don't know what we are wishing for exactly. What do we believe is realistic to think?
I would like to see a world in which a human can make a choice that's right for them, and the harms that society face are not blamed on one subsect. If someone is a harmful actor, they're treated in the way that law should treat them, but that harm is not then reflected on a societal issue because a woman does something with her body. For example, I feel like there's a lot of people who wish to criminalize a woman's choice to do something with her body because of how that impacts society. The impact of society is on the person doing the bad thing, the man, sorry, the man, not all men.
Thank you very much. We go in this order. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's a very hard question, but I think I would stick to using the correct words for what is happening. So we were talking about sexual exploitation versus sexual assault. We also see it on whether Epstein files. In the press, you will see, oh, young women, no, they were minors, they were girls. This is sex trafficking. It's a federal offense in the US. It's an internationally recognized offense at the United Nations level. So I think being aware that the words can be tweaked by journalists, by tech companies, and that is actually not what it is. So be aware of labels, and let's make sure that we fit the things in the right categories, and when the categories are not working, we can be flexible and create new words.
Thank you very much. Mireia? Yes, we want to believe in this. Yes. A wish? You have a wish for next year? No, a wish, something that you would like to happen. Like,
I wish that these young specialists, they teach us a lot and they bring this society further. Has been a pleasure listening to them, writing what they do. They are in a different era. Sometimes my brain clashes when I read their documents. Thank you. That's my hope for the future.
Thank you. Aida, improve this.
No, impossible. Less inspiring, but well, I have to say this. I really hope that all member states will transpose the directive without any fuss. And that maybe some of them will go a little bit beyond the minimum. That's one. The second one is this cross-fertilization and formal coordination between data protection authorities and labor inspectors that is really in the air. And when are they going to start coordinating? I don't know. And the third one, and it's really, really...
It was one, but it was one wish. But
can I say the third one?
You can say
well, the directive says that platforms have to disclose the algorithm, the parameters of the algorithm. I hope it happens.
Thank you very much. You all have the right to have a silent wish in your minds. Please have a wish. And we can thank our speakers very much for their talks. Thank you very much, and thank you for being here.